Are all politics local? Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Sue Jeffers for Libertarian Viewpoint. Libertarianism is all about liberty, the exercise of freedom that doesn't impinge on the rights of others. We constantly hear the drum roll of government solutions. This show's purpose is to allow you to see for yourself why non-government solutions are a better alternative. Today our guest is Randy Gilbert. You're in for a treat today too, because Randy is a former mayor. And Randy, so many of us do not understand what happens at the city level of government. We get our property taxes in the mail and we see a city segment, a school segment, and a county segment. So I invited you on today as a former mayor to explain to us how city government works.
Well, thank you, Sue. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, let's start with, you were the mayor of Long Lake.
Of Long Lake.
So now you're the former mayor.
I am.
And how come you decided to run to be a mayor in the first place?
You know, the process is a little bit longer than that, but I'll be brief with it. I was moved out to Long Lake, and there was a road project that was going to happen right in front of the house that I moved into. No one really knew what was going on. I started going up to City Hall, asking them what's going on. Wasn't getting great answers. So I got involved, and I found out that none of my neighbors knew what was going on. So to make the story short, I got involved, found out what the project was going to be. I was appointed to the Planning Commission after that because I did so much research. After being on the Planning Commission, I thought I want to be more involved. I stepped up, ran for City Council, was elected the next cycle, and I watched the mayor not do a whole lot. Would show up to the meetings, opening her packet, not being prepared, and I thought, this is wrong. The city needs to have leadership. The people need to know that, you know, they're entrusting 5 people, that they get involved, and they're going to be involved, and I thought, I'm going to get involved, and I ran for mayor against her. And I beat her in that cycle so that Long Lake had a voice, in more than just Long Lake, but in statewide, because it's important for the cities to have a voice, you know, in their immediate area and on the state level. And I wanted to make certain that a small town like Long Lake was represented.
So what happened with the road project?
Well, you know, interesting enough, the road project was going along with the Highway 12 bypass that was happening. And the road in front of my road was supposed to be 32 foot wide with sidewalks, and I'm like, this is Long Lake. We do not need sidewalks. We do not need to be 32 feet. The road's 28 feet with no sidewalks now, and I'd like to take a little credit for the fact that by me getting out there and letting people know that they were trying to impose things that we didn't need, and we got it pulled back, and it cost, I think it ended up being 40% less on the cost, which is my big thing. Don't charge us for something we don't need.
Why don't you tell us how it works? Were you surprised once you became the mayor?
Well, I was more surprised as a property owner in Minneapolis when I received those notices, and then if you didn't get to them, they weren't bashful of charging you the $220 to have a crew come out and chop down your weeds. Long Lake is not as aggressive on some of those things, but I did find that a lot of people think government should be doing something more. And when I took office of mayor, I made the comment to everybody after I got elected, there's 5 things we are going to do as a city. You know, the water's going to come, well, first and second, 1 and 2 are when the fire trucks need to roll, they're going to roll. Police will roll when they need to roll. Water will come into your house, and in our case, because we're not well in septic, sewer will leave when you flush your toilet, and we'll keep your streets plowed. After that, we should not be doing anything more or anything less for you. And there are people that believe that government should be doing a lot more, and I just disagreed with it. And it was shocking to me on how many businesses believe that government should be spending more for advertising and promoting their businesses, and their taxpayers believe we should be doing more. So to actually, it took probably 2 years to get people to really start thinking about what we are going to do for them. Did we get pushback? Yes, we got pushback all the way up to my last day as mayor about what we should and what we shouldn't do, and it's our money, you should be spending it this way. That's always a challenge for any sitting official.
The part that bothers me is so many people have lost sight of what the role of government is. And when you talk about your city should be advertising, why is that the role of government?
Yeah, I struggled with that one to no end. And there was a few people who disbelieved, because in Long Lake's case, we had a bypass that, Highway 12 was expanded and it no longer had an inlet to Long Lake. You could get in early or after. And a lot of the businesses were worried that they were going to feel a negative impact from this, which you can understand that would happen. But they knew about it for 17 years. It's not like MnDOT came up. Exactly. It's not like MnDOT came in and said, oh yeah, we're going to put a road in this year. I mean, the planning itself takes 10 years, and then you start the process and it takes 6-7 years to get that whole thing going. So I really was not very empathetic to those business owners that were so unprepared and seemingly so caught off guard by that. And this is what they thought we should do. I looked at them, I said, that's the chamber's business. You're part of a chamber. If our chamber's not strong, that's not the city's fault. We don't fund any of those operations. You want to have a strong message from the business community, you better be looking at who's the president, the VP, and your board of the chamber, and get them going. Will the city help you? Sure, we'll put a link up on our website and make it easier, so if people are Googling, there's more places for them. And I think that is a great role. We have a website for the city thing, and to have all those links out so somebody coming into town says, hey, I want to do business in Long Lake, come on in, we want you. You want to come to the city's website? You can start at the city's website, but we're going to link you out to the other locations, and we'll give you things that we think you need to do if you're coming in. Just because there's, if you're going to build a building, there's a building code and stuff. But the rest of it's not our responsibility, and I'm just amazed. I think people just think that because we're there, we should be doing more work, and that's absolutely the wrong thing.
So when you were the mayor, you made it very clear what you thought the role of the city was, and your police, your fire, your water, your sewer, maybe some road issues and that kind of stuff. Did you find there were areas that you immediately cut out? You've got lobbyists that go down to the Capitol. You've got advertising was another one that you brought up, involvement with the Met Council. There's all these kinds of things. Did you find there were areas you could say, no, we're not going to do that in an effort to keep taxes lower? The
biggest thing that we did is we used to have a planner on staff. Now, most people don't realize this. Long Lake is 1,800 people, 1,900 people, and it occupies a whopping 0.9 square miles. So why do we need a planner? We're fully developed. Everything that happens for the most part is redeveloping. And you spend $70,000, $80,000 on a planner and you'd get 2 building permits and a couple, it just absolutely made no sense to me. So that was one of the first positions that we started talking about. Do we need this position? We have Orono who sits next to us. We have Wayzata who have planners. Can we be using them? If they're coming in with the project, why should we be paying to help them through the project? If they're going to build something, shouldn't they have their own architect and the plan and bring it forward to our planning commission?
And I'm just appalled at how much money the city staff makes.
I'm amazed. They always try to link it to the business world. And we had this issue with a past city manager, wanted a raise, went out and did a study which the city paid for, to find out what the 10 cities in comparable size, what their city managers are being paid. And I disagree with it. The amount of money that they make, I think, you're giving some value. There's no question. I'm not taking that away. They keep the cities running. Mayors and city council members are not around all the time. But that amount of money, I struggle with.
Did you lower taxes?
We did lower taxes.
By a lot?
You know what? Let me tell you the story, because I'd love to say yes, but here's what we did. Long Lake is a recipient of LGA, local government aid. One of the things that always disappointed me, and this, I'm an accountant, I'm a planner. You have to plan to stop things from happening. You just don't get to react, because when you react, it's the wrong action that happens at that time. So when I came on board, Long Lake was receiving something in the neighborhood of $120,000 of LGA. And that was the other thing that I said as well, the 5 priorities. And I said, if you don't think LGA is going to get cut, your head's in the sand, pull it out. We need to figure out ways. So letting the planner go, $80,000, that went from taking that portion of LGA that was in the budget that would, I'm not saying it was funding the planner, but we pulled that out and put it into a CIP plan. Well, the next year or the year after, LGA got cut, our budget didn't go up. Now, if Long Lake's budget goes up, loses $80,000 of a revenue stream, and I hate to even call it a revenue stream, but if we lose that, that means you have to tax the people more. And I did not want to have Long Lake in that position. So over the course of the time, we combined the city manager and our finance director. We found one person who was a great finance guy, was old enough that he could run the city. So we got rid of another position. So I'm happy to say my accomplishments are that from the time I took office to the time I left office, taxes did go down overall, and Long Lake is no longer dependent on LGA. We still receive $80,000 or $90,000, but it goes into what I think is the appropriate fund, is a CIP, a capital improvement fund. So when you're doing the roads, or if you have a sewer break, those funds are there to help the cause out.
I call local government aid welfare for cities.
Yeah.
And they spend it on, in my city, a new community center, a $10 million expansion of the public safety building or the city hall. And these are the kinds of things that make me angry. We had a new public safety building, $10 million. And I go to the fire department, the guys are saying, oh, Sue, we really need this, we really need this. I'm like, really? Wouldn't a $5 million building work too? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess it would. And they never think about the bottom line and how it impacts the people who live there.
And I always hate to take shots at our servants like that, the police and the fire, because when you need them, you want them there. But Long Lake with this project had the same thing happening. And we got off a little bit of the topic, and I do want to come back to LGA as soon as I finish this. But with the highway coming through, we had to relocate our fire department. We had to relocate our city hall. And that part drove me nuts. I was not mayor when this stuff happened. It was one of the reasons why I stepped up really to run, is that we built a brand new city hall that they spent almost $1 million on, maybe a little bit more than $1 million for city of Long Lake. Now think about that, less than 1 square mile, 1,800 people, and they spend $1 million on city hall. Then we lose the fire hall, and they build a fire hall, and we did this in concert with Orono, and it is a gorgeous fire department. I love that we have a centrally located fire department, but it was driven by factors that I think were far beyond what we needed to do. And everybody in the area says it's probably the best looking fire department. Again, I think we could have saved the taxpayers a lot of money, because it was that, in that case, it was the taxpayers beyond Orono and Long Lake. That was the whole state of Minnesota that ended up putting pennies into a jar. It ended up being big dollars, and Long Lake got the fire department.
Wait a minute. I got to tell you about New Brighton's fire department.
Yeah.
New Brighton's fire department, we had a city manager. Thankfully, we got rid of him, which he's now wrecking havoc in another city because they just seem to move around. Yeah. But they build this giant public safety center. It's got 5 garages for all the fire departments. The city manager thought it was a really good idea then to go out and become the fire department for neighboring communities rather than using Ramsey County. They would come and buy this service from the city of New Brighton, and we'd make money on it. Only nobody wanted to do it. So we have this giant garage that has room for 5 fire trucks in it. In the end one, a little clown car sits. And every time I drive by it, I shake my head thinking that's $10 million down the drain, and I'm so sick of looking at that little clown car.
Yep, and you're never going to get it back.
Never.
Because the building, from the time it's built, just depreciates and becomes worth less today, unless the valuations go up. But all practical purposes, it's worth less the next day after it's built than it is the day it's built.
That's crazy.
And then Long Lake had a public works. We were all in one building before, the way a town of Long Lake should be. City Hall, Public Works, and Fire were all in one building. Now we have 3 buildings. We have a Public Works building that is huge. And again, I'm happy that the guys have a place to work. You need some place to work on this. But there sits, and I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit, 3,000 empty square footage that City Hall should have sat in. We didn't need a special building. City Hall should have been in Public Works, and that should have all been together, and we could have saved millions of dollars. But this is what happens when people let go of the wheel and let government take care of it. And if you don't have people stepping in saying this needs to stop, it never happens. And people are always happy. Oh, it didn't cost us anything. Really? $10 million just came out of the air in your case, and in our case it was $1 million for City Hall, $1 million for Public Works, and I can't even think of how many millions for the fire department. That just doesn't just come out of thin air. That's the state income tax. And when we hear about our, now we have a surplus going, but last election cycle we were running, what was it, $8 billion?
It was incredible.
That's where it comes from.
I know. It comes from outrageous spending on things that we don't need.
Right.
And you're right about people needing to they need to step up.
Right.
And they need to run for these city council spots. They need to run for the mayor spots. And they need to put their foot down. Like you said, you started it out on a commission or a planning board. Is that what it was?
Right.
Planning. So there's so many ways they can get involved. It's really easy if you think about it.
Well, it is. And there's so many other ways, as you know. I mean, school boards. Oh, my Lord. Again, love the schools. Schools are important. No one argues with that. If anyone thinks that Minnesota doesn't think it's important, say we got 51% of our operating budget that is for schools, schools, higher education all the way down. It's important to us. But like anything else that's important, and in these tough times, we need to make certain that we are getting the most we can out of our dollars. I struggled when I walked in, at caucus the last time, and you see the smart boards in all of the rooms. Now, they're a cool toy, and I don't want to call them toys. I'm going to get killed for saying that. But really, what's wrong with a whiteboard or a blackboard in most of the rooms?
They're handing out iPads to kindergartners in some school.
Right.
I don't have an iPad.
I don't have an iPad.
It's crazy, the things that they spend money on.
So, but then you have the soil and water conservation. You have, we talked about this before, come on air, the Met Council. You have Minnehaha watershed and all the other watersheds. Oh my Lord, the amount of money that those organizations can spend without even having to worry about it. The Met Council being a taxing authority as they are in certain ways, and the way they hit the cities is another beef if we want to get into that.
I want the Met Council eliminated.
I want the Met Council eliminated.
I think they have, Met Council was put together, buses and flushes.
Yep.
That was what they were supposed to be doing. They have expanded so large now, they have their own police chief. They've intruded into so many areas they were never intended to.
Or take it this way. I think the transportation and stuff should go away. That shouldn't be in there. But if the Met Council is going to be part of the flushes, then take the flushes right from the household. Don't hold the cities accountable and say, you need to do A, B, and C, D, and not give us a toolbox to get it done. City of Long Lake was getting fined opposed fees by Met Council for years, and we didn't have the wherewithal to do what they wanted to have done. I think the Met Council, and I'm not suggesting that we expand it, I'm just saying if the Met Council thinks they're so great on this stuff, then you know what? You take it all the way to the doorsteps, and you deal with the customer. You figure out how you're going to get rid of the I&I, the infiltration problems that all of Minneapolis, the greater Minneapolis area has, and you fix it. Don't be telling the City of Long Lake you need to fix it. You have more, fresh water coming into our sewer, and we don't know why, but you need to figure it out. That's baloney to me. This mandating stuff, you can get me going here. I am just not an opponent of mandating. Mandating creates nothing but inefficiencies and more tax dollars for all of our taxpayers, and it has to stop. It has to stop, and this is why we need people to get involved at the city, at the Water Council, to be going to the Met Council meetings outside of the city council members and talking to them and letting them know that you as a citizen are concerned about these things.
So in my city, it seems like every time I turn around, they're buying new trucks, they're buying new snowplows, they're buying new golf carts, they're buying equipment that some of us believe they could stretch it out so that they lasted a little bit longer. Did you find that problem in your city? We
found it more, and again, I'm taking a shot at it, in the fire department. And you do find in volunteer fire departments, or paid on call as they are, but it's a volunteer deal, that a lot of the chiefs that get elected from within, that new fire truck is their legacy, and they want that new, but that's a $800,000 legacy. How are you going to get to that? We pushed back on that quite a bit. We forced them to make a CIP plan, and we had to approve it. In our case, with Orono and Port of Medina, we had their city councils involved to say, let's take a look at this. And we did the other side of it then. How much is it to maintain that truck so that it's going to roll as it's supposed to roll for another year or 5 years versus purchasing? And we pushed back, and we were successful on that. Now, the fire or the police was not ours. We contract our police, so we have no control on that. We take a look at our bill. They come and say, yeah, we're going to get it. We have a 3-year rolling contract. If we think it's getting too much, we can go out for bidding. But when we are in control of it, we put it to a point where we said, we're not going to be buying new trucks all the time. We're not buying the new ATV with a 50-gallon tank so we can put out brush fires. There's other ways around this.
So if you were going to give someone a tutorial on city government, we gave them lots of things to think about, whether it was the Met Council, whether it was local government aid, tax increment financing is another one I want to get into in just a second. But if you were talking to someone new to city politics, what would you tell them were the things that they should look at in their city to be aware of, that maybe they might be spending too much money, maybe they might have exceeded their authority? What should people pay attention to when they think of their city?
The first and foremost, because personnel is the largest portion of any budget, I would tell them get into your budget and take a look at how many people you have on staff and what are they being hired for.
Where would you find this?
You can go, most websites will have their budgets on, and if they don't, go to the city council member, talk to the mayor and them and tell them that you want this. And I would go that way. I would go to the mayor and the city council in the open portion of any meeting and say, I want to see the budget for the last 3 years, or your budget for the last 3 years. Because then they will order it. You know, most of them are being recorded now. They're on record when you ask for that. They will instruct staff to get you that, and you'll have it within a week, and you can start looking through it. If you have issues, you could call me at any time. I would gladly tell you where to look on the budget, because you need to look. And personnel is the first place to start.
Personnel, number one.
Personnel is the first place to start. You know, second, you can start looking at programs. Are they giving money to, you know, in our case, the Corn Days, which we didn't anymore. We used to have a gambling fund that came in there for different things. But take a look at how much money they're putting into special programs. Well, that's going to be a smaller portion. That is a really easy place for cities to say, look, in the past we used to help out on this, but you know, we can't do this anymore. You know, we think your program might be well, but it's not the city's role to be involved with it. I would question every city official on what extra money are you putting out there that's not going for police, fire, water in, sewer out, and making sure the roads are kept up and plowing. I would want to know why we spend the money on that. The thing that I would tell anybody is that you need to make certain that you show up at the city council meetings for 2 different meetings. And this is where I think the system is really flawed. You have the valuation where they come out and say, hey, here's what your house is valued. And most people look at that and think, oh, hey, great, the house went up $10,000 or it went down $10,000. If you don't agree with that value, that is the only time in the year that you get to argue that. That value drives what percentage of your taxes you're going to get hit with at the next, you know, at a date to be named, which is usually right at the end of the year. You need to make certain that you agree with that valuation, and you should do a little research and say, is my home equally valued as my neighbors that are like-kind homes, and make sure that you have that down, because it's too late later, and most people confuse this. The second one is when you have the preliminary budget that comes out. You need to look at that, because that is your time to argue that you're spending too much money, and so you need to do that work. Get the budget, take a look at it at that point in time, which is normally mid-November. You can get out there and take a look at those preliminary budgets and state your case to the council and the mayor and find out why they have that in there. And if you need to get more of your neighbors there, because councils will listen when the room is packed.
Right, because usually the room's empty.
Usually it is. It's crazy to me that it is, but
I know.
You do find in politics, and it's especially on the city level, most people do not show up at City Hall, and this is a kind of a crude statement, unless you gore a bull in their front yard.
Right.
You know, if you have not parked a truck in their front yard and started digging it out, they don't care. And that's unfortunate, because you need to care about everything that's happening in your city, because if it's happening on the other side of town, you're still getting charged for it.
Right. And it's only a matter of time before it's happening on your half of the town.
Exactly.
Okay, here's one of this is what got me started in politics. Tax increment financing. And it's supposedly a development tool. And you know what? It's a way to spend a whole bunch of money.
Yep.
And it's a way that in my city, a huge chunk of my city pays lower taxes. I pay higher taxes because they're trying to eliminate blight or develop something. My city has spent over $100 million on a project that is barely off the ground. We've spent 20, 30 years on the Northwest Quadrant. It's
Right.
the most ridiculous thing. Can you explain how tax increment
that's
financing
actually one
works?
of the examples that I use about how it just doesn't work the way that they think. You know, TIF is actually, tax increment financing has changed a lot over the years. You know, when it first came out, a developer would come in and they'd want to redevelop. And so you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because all you're doing is saying, okay, the taxes on that building this year, for the sake of the story, are $100,000. You're going to rebuild it and taxes will go to $200,000, but we're going to give you the $100,000. In the old days, they used to extrapolate, total all of it up for 15 years, whatever, and say, developer, here's $1.5 million. We're going to give you this up front, and we want you to develop it, because we believe that you developing that piece of property is going to help the rest of the city. In most cases, that just did not happen. TIF now tends to be pay as you go. So as things change, and it takes the cities off the hook. So it's a smarter role for the cities that they're not paying for it. But it still takes the tax dollars out of the system. And I struggle with it because of reasons. We had TIF come before us quite a bit, and I voted no on it every single time. Somebody buys a piece of property, you know, they negotiate their best deal, and then all of a sudden after they close, they find, oh, there's an oil plume and we have to get rid of it. I look at it and I say, you know, buyer beware. Why is that the city's responsibility? Because you didn't do enough due diligence to find out that there was an old gas station that sat on there, and now you want the city to take care of that, otherwise you're not going to make money? Well, I'm sorry. We've got a lot of residents here who paid for the properties, you know, and overpaid maybe, or the valuations went up. We're not giving them money back either. So I think TIF should be eliminated. I think if a developer is going to come in, they need to not overpay. They need to do all their homework, or the project doesn't go. And if that project sits empty for a while, you know, then it'll sit empty for a while. But eventually the seller will have to adjust the price. It'll get to a point where it'll work, and it'll move on. The city should not be, as far as I'm concerned. We do a comp plan every 10 years that says, here's how we see the best use for the city. And I think that's okay to say, you know, we looked at things, how our infrastructure is. But to try to entice a developer to build something in one place, you know, the developers know what they want to build and what they don't want to build. And they've now played the game of this is how we can get more money out of the cities and make more money on the project.
Which does nothing but drive up the cost of property taxes for all the rest of us in that particular city.
Exactly.
It drives me crazy.
Yep.
All right, so now I'm going to give you a chance to look into the camera and tell people why city politics is so important to pay attention and to get involved.
You need to be involved for this main reason. This is the closest you are going to be to city politics at your city level, city and school. But you do not get any closer than the mile, 2 mile, 4 mile that you have to drive from your house on a Tuesday night, a Monday night, a Wednesday night to speak to the 5 people in a smaller city, 7 people if it's a little bit larger, that matter, that can hear you and can make a change. If you're upset about anything, go to that meeting, speak in the open section, talk about what's going on. They'll give you direction of how you can get more involved, and then you need to take that next step and the step after that. Get involved. Bring them back information and tell them why they're right or wrong on what they're doing, and you will make a change.
And it's so important, too, that people don't understand your city website is a wealth of information.
It is.
You can find out what the salaries are being paid. You can look at some financials. You may need to request more. Contact information for your mayors and your city councils, and you can be lost in these websites for days.
You could. And the other thing that's very important is you may not have been that, you know, cared too much about things, and then you finally get involved and you say, why are we building this road project? The minutes are all online. You can read back through. You can chronologically figure it out, but don't just rely on the internet. Go to City Hall, talk to the city administrator, talk to the person that's sitting at the front desk. They're there to help you. They are not employees of the city council. They're your employees as a taxpayer in that city, and you can ask them for anything, and they have to give it to you. And if they don't, go back to the meeting and ask the mayor and the council members and tell them what your experience was, because if that's happening to you, it's probably happened to other people, and there's no other way for them to know that except for that purpose.
Exactly right. They work for us.
They are our employees.
Well, we're out of time. If you find yourself agreeing with Randy, you might be a libertarian. To find out, take the world's smallest quiz at www.theadvocates.org. Remember, Libertarian Viewpoint brings you the non-government, liberty-based solutions that other media refuse to tell you about. Liberty works, and it is always the best choice. If anyone in government can prove otherwise, I challenge them to speak up. To view past shows, search YouTube using Libertarian Viewpoint. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for other shows of Libertarian Viewpoint.